From the 16th century until the 19th century, many countries in Europe were engaged in the slave trade of buying and selling black slaves. The transatlantic slave trade was a horrific chapter in human history. It involved the forced transportation of millions of Africans from their homeland to the Americas, where they were enslaved and forced to work in brutal conditions.
The transatlantic slave trade began in the 16th century and lasted for over 300 years. It was a major part of the European colonization of the Americas. The slave trade was driven by the demand for labor in the Americas, where plantations were being established to grow crops such as sugar, tobacco, and cotton. In general, when we think of slaves, we imagine black slaves. But from the 16th to the 19th centuries, white slaves were also frequently bought and sold.
However, white slaves were bought and sold in Morocco and the Ottoman Empire, which were Islamic countries at the time, and in areas such as Algeria, Tunisia, and Libya. The Barbary slave trade was a practice of enslaving people from Europe and the Mediterranean region and selling them in North Africa and the Middle East. This slave trade was active from the 16th century to the 19th century. At that time, there were as many white slaves as there were black slaves. Around the 7th and 8th centuries, the Islamic Umayyads occupied most of the Iberian Peninsula, which is now Spain and Portugal. The Umayyads also ruled vast territories from northern Africa to what is now Pakistan. At this time, the Umayyad dynasty, which was an Islamic power, was at war with several Christian powers in Europe for a long time. During the course of the wars, there were many white soldiers and prisoners of war, so white slaves were common during this time. Also, Muslim pirates operating in North Africa took civilians from coastal cities such as Amalfi and Genoa in Italy, and coastal cities in France over hundreds of years. Muslim pirates also raided European merchant ships and trading ships that traveled the Mediterranean, causing considerable damage. Although their captors knew that the captive white people were dying while living as slaves, they were unable to resist attacking them because of the weak power of each country. In this way, European whites trembled in fear when they had to cross the Mediterranean by boat, due to the possibility that they would be attacked and sold by Muslim pirates. As the tyranny of these Muslim pirates became progressively more severe, in 1390, European forces led the crusade to attack an important pirate city but failed. In addition, the Islamic rulers deliberately supported the pirates, and their power grew stronger day by day. Over time, Isabella I and Ferdinand II of Spain completed the Reconquista and expelled Muslims from all over Spain. These Muslims had nowhere to go and were forced to move to North Africa. In this way, many Muslims flowed into present-day Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, and Libya, which were the dens of pirates at the time. Barbary is a historical term that was used to refer to the coastal regions of North Africa. The Muslim pirates who rampaged in this region came to be called Barbary pirates by white Europeans. Because of these Barbary pirates, the number of white slaves increased exponentially. the pirates plundered and kidnapped wherever they could go by boat. With the support of the Ottoman Empire, they became more powerful and were called Turkish privateers or corsair. A privateer or corsair is a pirate who is a civilian and has been authorized by the government with the right to attack and capture enemy ships. The Ottoman Empire used the Barbary pirates as its official navy to keep Western European countries in check. As a result, the pirates' spirit soared, and for about 300 years, starting in the 16th century, they captured about 1.5 to 2 million white people and sold them into slavery.
Barbary pirates, who received support from the Ottoman Empire, even learned sailboat manufacturing techniques and operated as far as the coasts of Spain and Italy. With their operations extending to Ireland, England, Iceland, and Norway, these Barbary pirates became a solid supplier of white slaves. Barbary pirates profited from capturing white slaves, who were considered a valuable commodity, with greater captures leading to higher earnings. In this way, ships from England, France, Spain, Italy, etc., sailing the Mediterranean Sea, as well as residents living in coastal areas, became good prey for them. In 1554, they attacked a place called Viste in southern Italy and took about 7,000 residents as slaves. And in 1627, they invaded a village in Iceland and kidnapped about 400 residents. At this time, they committed the atrocity of crowding elderly or physically weak people who seemed unlikely to be sold as slaves into the church and setting fire to it.
People who were taken as slaves were sometimes released by contacting their families and demanding a ransom. Bishop Olaf Egilsson, who had been taken from Iceland, was released the following year, 1628, after his ransom was paid. After returning to Iceland, Bishop Olaf Egilsson wrote a book about his terrible experience living as a slave.
However, most of the relations of captured white slaves could not afford to pay the ransom. The countries affected by this trade did not remain silent, raised money for poor people who could not pay the ransom, and freed the white slaves. Slaves who could not be freed despite these efforts were sold to Arabs and as far as Persia, India, and even China. White men who were captured as slaves had all their hair forcibly shaved off and were used as oarsmen on pirate or Islamic ships, or were sold to various labor camps in the Muslim world and exploited until they died. In particular, black men were mainly captured rather than black women for use as labor, while women were more popular than men among white slaves. Not only were they easier to kidnap than men, but it was also popular among Arab nobles and kings at the time to take beautiful white women as concubines. Of course, there were cases where women were made into maids and made to do housework or various other tasks, but in the Islamic society at the time, which recognized polygamy and slavery, also having them as concubines or slaves were not a problem at all. As a result, among the captured white female slaves, those with outstanding beauty were sold at very high prices. Because of this situation, it is said that the white people in Europe were terrified when they heard about Barbary pirates and shuddered at the mere mention of the name. Also, if any of the captured white people converted to Islam, They were accepted by the same side and engaged in piracy together. Among the white people who converted to Islam in this way, some capable and smart white people became pirate leaders. Slaves were even severely tortured by Muslims in the process of trying to convert them to Islam. They were hung upside down and beaten so hard that the skin on the soles of their feet peeled off. Their bodies were scorched with hot iron rods, and they were also tortured by being lifted by several people and dropped on the floor. Miguel de Cervantes, the author of the novel Don Quixote, was taken as a slave by Barbary pirates in 1575 and lived as a slave for 5 years. And in the novel Robinson Crusoe, the main character Robinson Crusoe was also captured by pirates and lived as a slave. Some Europeans formed pirate groups to take revenge and attacked Muslim cities to take revenge on the Barbary pirates for their attacks on European ships and crews. These pirate groups, known as privateers, were often funded by European governments. However, rather than just taking revenge on the pirates, they also attacked ordinary cities and captured the Arabs and sold them as slaves.
If you look at this trend, the behavior of the Barbary pirates and the white pirates for revenge was the same. As time passed, many European countries that succeeded in the Industrial Revolution in the 19th century began to fiercely attack the pirates to retaliate against the Barbary pirates who had been plundering and kidnapping them.
In the First and Second Barbary Wars, the United States attacked Tripoli, and Britain attacked Morocco, and the number of pirates decreased significantly. However, there was no complete mop-up. Later, in 1830, France attacked and colonized Algeria to eliminate Barbary pirates. So, through colonization, they were finally able to eradicate the vicious Barbary pirates.
After France colonized Algeria, it is said that they unleashed the resentment they had toward the pirates on the people there. Valuable white slaves were referred to as white gold. At the time, the Islamic people seemed to have considered white slaves to be valuable enough to be called gold. It seems that both black slaves and white slaves lived miserable lives.
Even today, in many places in the Third World, there are places where people live like slaves through human trafficking in a blind spot of human rights. There are many forms of modern slavery, including forced labor, forced marriage, and human trafficking. It is an urgent matter that needs to be addressed as soon as possible. Thank you for watching the video, White Slaves, provided by History and Current Events. Gina, Bella, Cindy, Helena, and Tony have contributed so far as narrators. Thank you.